Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm your host, Kyle David. Today, I want to talk about vulnerability. Vulnerability. And this idea I've been thinking about recently. I actually almost posted this yesterday. I don't know why I didn't. Vulnerability. And the idea I was thinking of is that vulnerability breeds trust. And let me explain. Well, let's talk about what vulnerability is. Vulnerability, this is not the Webster definition. This is kind of Kyle's definition pieced together. Vulnerability is being authentically yourself, flaws and all. Flaws and all, right? Vulnerability is authentically being yourself, flaws and all. And so the reason that I say vulnerability breeds trust, if you want people to trust you, the quickest way to build trust, I believe, is to be vulnerable and to show people who you are authentically, flaws and all. Because I know, and I don't know about you guys, I know when I see somebody being vulnerable and just open about their flaws and the things about them that are imperfect and their story and the mistakes they've made, I start to trust that person because I'm like, oh, okay, they're being real. They're authentic. Authenticity and vulnerability, like those are things that people trust. Those are things people look for when they're looking to trust somebody. So I think the quickest way and the best foundation for trust is vulnerability, right? Is just being authentically yourself, flaws and all. And that's something that I've struggled with in my life is not wanting people to think I'm flawed or imperfect, which is silly because we're all flawed and imperfect. But I've just not wanted people to look down on me or to think badly of me. So I've struggled in my life to just be open about all my flaws. And at this stage in my life, I'm much more open and vulnerable. And I think it's built a lot of trust with a lot of people. Me just being open about my story with addiction, and different pains in my life and just my imperfections and those things. And I think it's built a lot of trust with a lot of people. So I think I've experienced the power of being vulnerable. And I also know a lot of other people in my circle that have been vulnerable with me and shared their flaws and their imperfections with me. And it's made me trust them more and it's built a deeper level of trust, if you will, just because they've been vulnerable with me and sharing their imperfections and their flaws. I just really think it creates trust when you are vulnerable with people and authentic about who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that breeds trust. I think that people trust people that are, because if you're vulnerable and authentic, that means you're real. That means you're being real. And people want to be around real people. People want to relate to you. And because we're all flawed and imperfect, people can't relate to you if you only show the good side, right? People want to see that you're real, that you're relatable. And the only way to show that you're relatable is to be vulnerable, is to be authentic. And when you're vulnerable, people see, okay, that person's like me. They can relate to authenticity and vulnerability because they're also flawed and imperfect, right? We all are, right? So people are looking for people to be vulnerable. The world is full of and social media especially is full of people showing you all their perfections and all the good stuff. And the people that stand out, I think, are the people that are vulnerable and real. And they're like, look, I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all together. And I'm speaking for me. I don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all together. I spent 10 years being addicted to drugs and alcohol. I mess up all the time. I get angry at people and let my emotions get the best of me. This is me being vulnerable. I have negative thoughts about myself and about other people. I get up in arms sometimes about politics and all these divisive issues. I'm a real person just like you. Let's not sugarcoat it, right? Like we all can let our emotions drive us. We can all have different angers and issues and whatnot. So yeah, let's just be real. That's me. And I think the shared story, addiction, and just struggle with, and sometimes not liking myself and being insecure about I posted yesterday, if you follow me on social media, about always feeling misunderstood and insecure about my passion, my intensity. I've had a lot of women in my life tell me I'm too intense. I don't say a lot of women like I have all these women, but I've had numerous women in my life tell me I'm too intense. I'm too aggressive, too passionate. Um, and yeah, so that's created insecurities in me. So here we go. I'm just going down the rabbit hole of being vulnerable. That's created insecurities in me. I felt like I wasted a lot of my life spending my time and money on drugs and alcohol, and I really regret a lot of stuff, and I regret the way I treated a lot of people, and just yeah, man, I'm not perfect. So that's just me being vulnerable. And I think when we open up about that stuff and are vulnerable with ourselves and with other people, again, that just builds trust, because it takes a level of I don't know how to say it. It takes a level of just, I guess it takes a level of trust in yourself to become vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable with other people, they're gonna trust you more, because you're showing them that you're like them, right? You're showing them that you're a real human. You're not, obviously we're real humans, but you're showing them that you're real, you're authentic, you're not perfect, you don't have it all figured out. And that's what people are looking for. That's what this world needs, is people that will excuse me, be vulnerable and be real. The world's full of fake. So we need more real. So I say all that just to circle back to what I wanted to begin with and end with, and just the topic of this little blurb conversation podcast that I'm recording is that vulnerability breeds trust, right? And the world the world is full of people that don't trust each other, right? The Republicans don't trust the Democrats, Democrats don't trust the Republicans, this side versus that side on every issue. But no sides on any of these things, the Republicans, the Democrats, the blah, blah, none of them are vulnerable, right? The Democrats always talk about the flaws of the Republicans, and the Republicans talk about the flaws of the Democrats, but neither side admits the flaws of themselves. You never hear the Republicans to come out and talk about the flaws on their side. And you never hear the Democrats come out and talk about the flaws on their side. And I'm just using these as examples. Um, we live in a world that's not vulnerable, right? Everybody takes these hard stances and acts like they're just perfect. And right, like if you take a hard stance on masks or vaccines or politics, um, either way, left or right or whatever side you're on, you're basically saying, hey, us over here are not flawed, we're perfect, and your side is flawed. And if each side would just be vulnerable and say, hey, here's some of the flaws that are on this side, and here's some of the flaws that are on that side, it would build trust, and we could have dialogue and conversation. So that just hopefully hammers home the idea that if people and groups and ideologies would be vulnerable about the flaws of themselves and of their ideologies or of their group or whatever, people would trust them more, right? Like if I was the head of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, my first execution would be, what are our flaws? What is not great about us? And then let's go tell people. So if I was the head of the Democratic Party, I would say, hey, as the Democrats, these are the flaws that we have as Democrats. And these are the things we need to work on. And I guarantee there would be instantly be more Democrats. Or if I was the head of the Republican Party, I would say, hey, what are our flaws? And I would come out and say, hey, folks, as a Republican Party, these are the flaws that we have. And I just wanted to be open and honest with it. We need to work on it, but these are the flaws we have. There would instantly be more Republicans. Or if I was, again, the mask of the vaccine, if I was on either side, I would say, hey, here are some of the flaws with our side. We're not perfect. Here's some of the issues that we're not perfect at. And here we are. We want to work on it. We want to bring you more answers to whatever side you're on. There would instantly be more people that relate to that. And as humans, right, as I come out and say, hey, I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I've hurt people. I've been angry, mean, verbally abusive to people, right? Like, I think hopefully that would automatically want people to lean into me more, because they're like, okay, this dude's not trying to be perfect. And I'm not, and you, I think, could do the same thing and have people instantly trust you more when you come out and say, hey, look, these are my issues, these are my flaws, I'm working on it, but I just want you to know this is authentically me, the good and the bad, right? You want to be authentically yourself in a holistic sense, all around, the good and the bad, and people will trust you more. That's the whole point of what I'm talking about right here. And to be vulnerable, sometimes even like when I'm talking right now, I'm like, man, do people watching and listening just think I'm ranting? Is this making any sense? Like, And so to be perfectly vulnerable, I'm very insecure sometimes about like, do I make sense? Do I talk too much? Are people understanding what I'm saying? Or am I just ranting and I'm just talking too much? Like, this is me being vulnerable. I think about it all the time, like daily. I'm like, man, people misunderstand me. They probably think I know I'm passionate, but people might think it's just intense and I'm just rambling and ranting to hear myself talk. And that's an insecurity that I have. So being vulnerable, I sometimes think people just think I talk too much and I just want to hear myself talk. And that's not the case, but I mean, that's how I feel sometimes. So just being vulnerable. So anyways, I'm not just going to keep on talking about the same thing. You get it. Go be vulnerable with people. Go tell people your flaws, tell them your story, the good and the bad, the whole thing. And I think you'll find that people will lean into that more. People want to be around you more. People will trust you more. When you're real and authentic and not trying to be something you're not, people see that. People want to be around that. I want to be around that. I want to be around people that are not trying to be something they're not, that are just like, hey, this is me, this is what it is, the good and the bad, take it or leave it. I want to be around those people. And I think most people do. So if you take anything from this, try to, with the people that are around you, the people you interact with, the people you love, try to be more authentic. Just try to tell them the whole deal, who you are, good and bad and the ugly. So I hope this was helpful. I appreciate you guys always listening to me and letting me rant and communicate and talk. And I'm happy to do it. And I'm trying to be helpful out here. So thank you guys so much. This has been another episode of Inside the Mirror podcast. I'm Kyle David, and I'll be back. I'll be back next time with another episode next week of Inside the Mirror podcast. Adios.